Okay, we are live and we have some commenters from LinkedIn. Cool. So
Woohoo!
we're back. Coffee chats are back. I'm super excited. I don't know which side she's on. This is Jess. She's my first senior data analyst that I'm bringing to the coffee chats, which I'm super excited about because up until now, I've been talking to entry-level data analysts and I've loved how everyone has taken on a different vibe. Um, but I'm already an entry-level data analyst, and so now I get to learn from somebody who is ahead of me in life and their career. So, welcome, Jess. Thanks for coming on. This is your first time
Yeah.
talking live to your audience?
I've talked live once, but I don't do live often, so it'll be fun today.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so just to get it kicked off, if you guys are here, let us know in the chat. Say hello. We have like a little thing that tells us like there's usually it'll say between 1 and 5 people, but I've had like 200 people in the stream before and it told me 5. So if you're here in the chat, just pop a hello, let us know. I'm curious about what different times of day work well for people. So I just thought, Jess, I've kind of heard your story in pieces before, but I'm curious, like you said you got a master's in data, right?
Yes, my master's is in business analytics, so it's kind of businessy, but then the data analytics combined, so it really mixes the technical and the soft skills together.
Okay, cool. So did you always see yourself as somebody who was like, I'm going to be like a techie person or whatever? Or like, did that kind of happen by accident?
It honestly happened by accident. I remember growing up, I never felt like I was techie enough to study math or do computer science. Even in college, I saw the computer science majors and I was like, that's not me. I'm not techie enough to do computer science. And even my math degree, I did my math degree just to kind of defy stereotypes. I didn't see many women doing it, and I wanted to do the hard thing.
That's really cool. Yeah, I feel like you're the first person to come on here who like to talk to me who like actually kind of with any intention got into data. Like all of us are like, I was a teacher, I was like a therapist or whatever. And I love that you are a woman and the first person to say I did this on purpose and you're a woman. I love that. So when you were doing your master's, did you have any like data related experience before you did your master's?
So I did get a little bit of experience in undergrad. I got a job on campus working in enrollment management, and it was kind of this thing. I decided to stay on campus over the summer because I just wanted to stay on campus and hang out while everyone else was gone for summer. And I kind of just went door to door on campus looking for a job. And at that point, I was looking for anyone who was willing to pay me. My sole purpose was looking for income. But I thought it'd be cool if I could get a job that would also offer me experience. So I ended up getting a job in enrollment management as a predictive analytics specialist. And looking back, the work I was doing was like EDAs, like very entry level work. But that was the first time I really cleaned data, worked with real data. And that was my first data project. So that's where I really got excited about data. And then from there, I did a data analytics directed study my senior year of undergrad. And that was kind of like where it was a done deal for me. I was like, this is really fun. I enjoy data. I don't know exactly what kind of a career I want to go into, but I knew I wanted to continue on my education and keep learning. And that's when I applied to grad school.
That's really cool. And then when you were in grad school, did you have any like jobs or were you just, I mean, grad school is a job, but
It is, yes.
otherwise,
Yeah, so my program was a full-time program, so it didn't leave me with a ton of time to really work, but I did have to work to pay my bills. So I was working as a server and just doing like these random jobs to make ends meet. And I also got a grad assistantship. So if anyone out there is interested in grad school, I 1000% recommend a grad assistantship or a TA position. They completely covered my tuition, which means I didn't pay anything towards my tuition. Then on top of that, they gave me a monthly stipend. So that was like my most important job I had because it was paying for my tuition. And then I just had all these side jobs. And then a few months into grad school, I actually applied for a data analytics internship at a local fintech startup. And that was like the best feeling in the world because I was able to quit my serving job where I basically made like $5 an hour. And
Yeah.
it was also real world experience. And then they hired me full time. So that was like my foot in the door to data and the tech industry.
Yeah. So in your assistantship, did that mean you like got hands-on practice, like training and teaching other people about data? Was it like a TA position kind of a thing?
No. So it was in this weird department at UGA called Archway Partnership. I say weird because it's so hard to explain. So basically, the department goes in all of these communities in Georgia, and they work to develop those communities and improve them. So they focus on like smaller towns. A lot of them are in like South Georgia and very rural areas. And they basically provide education and resources for those towns. So they use the University of Georgia's resources to develop the towns in a way. It was like a very interesting place to work. And my job was basically just working on whatever needs there were. I didn't have a data focus for that role. It was just whatever is needed right now is what we're going to put Jess on. So some of the jobs
Hmm.
I did some data cleaning in Excel just to improve data organization for one of the towns. And then I also worked to improve data collection for like this system they had to organize the projects. And to be completely honest, I didn't do like tons of work for my grad assistantship. I got really lucky that it wasn't too much work, but I was just kind of on call when needed and I would jump in and out of projects.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's cool. I was just wondering because I know that you're a manager now, and I wondered, like, being a manager, and we'll probably come to this later in the call, but like being a manager means kind of having to learn how to explain to newer people to data, like how to do data, which is understandably very complicated. So you said you worked at like a fintech place, and that was like your foot in the door, which is interesting to me because I feel like honestly, like the hardest thing about getting into data analytics, like the way that a lot of people on LinkedIn are doing it, where they're just kind of like teaching themselves, is just that foot in the door. Um,
Mhm.
but you said you did like an internship, right?
Yeah, so basically this little fintech startup with only 40 people in my local community, Athens, Georgia, they were looking for a data analyst intern. And they came to my master's program and they were like, "Hey, we need an intern. You guys have a bunch of analytics students. We'd love to hire one of them." So 6 people ended up applying, and I was the only woman who applied. So I was like, this could go for my advantage or not. At least I'll stand out. Like they'll have no choice but to remember me because I was the only woman at the meeting. And I kind of like joke about it looking back because my sole like motive for getting this job wasn't because I really wanted an internship in data analytics. It was because they were paying $17 an hour, and I was, like, making $5 an hour on average at this restaurant. Like, I was barely paying my bills. I was lucky to pay my $300 rent a month. Like, I was broke and spending all of
Hmm.
my time studying in grad school. So when I heard $17 an hour, I was like, "They could have me cleaning, like, the break room, and I would do it for $17 an hour."
Hmm.
So I remember that when the 2 hiring managers came to talk about the internship to my grad school cohort, I did like the whole LinkedIn thing, the networking, but in person, I put myself out there. I stayed at the end of the meeting, I introduced myself, and I pitched my experiences. And most importantly, I expressed how excited I was about the opportunity and how badly I wanted that. So I
Yeah.
immediately got an interview. They only interviewed 2 out of 6 people, and I got basically shortlisted for an interview. And then they ended up hiring me in the end, and they said that they knew that I really wanted it and I would work really hard. They could tell that I had that passion and excitement about the role, and they said that they could tell I knew how to think. So, it's just kind of funny looking back. This was pre-COVID, and now so many things are online now, so it's just funny seeing the parallels between the networking I did back then and, the things I talk about now, networking on LinkedIn and getting interviews.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think that internships, like in your opinion, do you think there's internships available to people trying to get into the field who aren't in grad school? Because I remember thinking about like, oh, if I get a data internship, and then I went and tried to look on the internet, and I was like, this is not an easy task to find an internship. Like they were all like, like for like internships at like Facebook and like Google and stuff. I was like, I'm in no way qualified for these. But then like the little one that you said, right? But like how like do you think that would be findable to people not in grad school?
Um, I honestly don't know. To be honest, I haven't searched for data analytics internships recently, but I imagine it's probably pretty competitive just because I don't think most companies probably hire interns, or there might not be as many internship roles out there. And then, of course, the entry level market is very oversaturated. There's a lot of people trying to look into analytics. So, a lot of people message me on LinkedIn and they're like, how can I get an internship? And I'm like, go straight for the full time job. Like, if you get an internship that's going to give you a few months' experience, great, go for it. But it might just be better to spend a few more months working on your skills and developing yourself and get that full-time job and the salary and the benefits if you can. Because I think
Hmm.
internships are kind of hit or miss unless you go for like a huge company.
Yeah. It seems to me too like the almost like the associate analyst positions are almost like they're like only one step above the internship. Like a lot of times when I look at the job descriptions, it's like it's structured like an internship. Like we're going to be training you. It's like this 6-month program of being an associate analyst, and then after that, you being graduate to being an analyst or a junior analyst. Have you seen that?
I personally haven't seen it. I think associate levels are kind of rare too. Like when I see a data analyst title, for me, that sounds like kind of entry level, like meaning that's like the lowest level probably at the company. So I haven't really seen a ton of associate data analyst roles. And I think those kind of go with internships. Like if you're entry level and that if you find a role that's an associate level, go for it. But don't like write yourself off of a regular data analyst title because that's just going to narrow down your search pool. And a lot of times, like you can get a data analyst title if that's the entry level for that company.
Yeah. So what was your first like actual like okay, I'm a data analyst now. Like what was your first like actual data analyst role?
Um, so that would be the data analyst role. When I was interning at this company, they hired me on full time. So I moved from data analyst intern to data analyst.
Okay. And can you tell me like what was that position like? Like as, I guess more the official entry level, like what was it? What would you actually do at your job? Is the question. I get that all the time. I don't know if you get that question all the time, but like
Yes,
what
for
do you
sure.
actually do as a data analyst? It feels very vague.
Yeah, so in that position, I was working in SQL and Power BI. I'm a huge Power BI fan. I love it. And I was working on building dashboards and really just learning how to write my own queries, build tables, bring them into Power BI, ETL the data. So I just learned a ton about some data modeling, like building different tables and how to connect them in a data model without breaking the whole system, which happened many times. Learning how to clean the data, transform it in the way I needed it for the dashboards. And then on the front end of Power BI, I built a lot of metrics and visualizations and turned those all into dashboards for the stakeholders. So I was
Hmm.
like a full stack analyst.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's like a lot for your first like for an entry level role. Do you think that someone who came into that without any prior experience would have needed to kind of work their way up to being able to do that stuff, or you think that they would have just brought them into that right away?
I think it really depends on the person because really I didn't have any prior full-time experience when I started full-time as a data analyst. I did have about 7 months experience interning. So I did have a lot of company knowledge coming in. I mean, it was a very seamless transition. It wasn't like I felt different because I was full-time. I mean, I did when I got paid the first time. That felt nice, but it was a seamless transition for me, and I think having that intern experience and my master's degree definitely helped, but I don't think anything truly prepares you for real full-time experience. So, I think it depends on the person and their ability to learn quickly. I think anyone could probably start out in the position that I did doing that kind of work, and I will say it also really helps when you have a good manager. My manager was very patient. He would sit down and teach me things. He would give me the space to go struggle and, beat my head against the wall. And then he would be there to catch me when I fell. So that really makes a difference as well.
Yeah. In my role right now, I've got a really good manager, and I feel like it's just made such a big difference because every time I come up against something, like I know that I'm kind of not in the dark. And before he was my manager, he had done my role, but there wasn't like a him for his role. And he's like, "Oh, trust me, you would not believe the number of hours that I would spend just like trying to figure something out and not being able to come to a conclusion, having to find a way around it." And so now when I talk to people who are like trying to think about getting into the field, I'm like, I know you can't be picky with your first data job, especially with the way the market is right now. It's so bad. Um, so like I think it's very privileged for people to be like, this is a red flag with your first data analyst job, never do this, 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 this. I'm like, that is a very privileged conversation for you to have because like if I have bills to pay tomorrow and I get offered a job today, I'm taking the job today. But if there's any flexibility in choosing, I tell people like, I think your manager, like, I personally think that like your manager is like the most important factor for your first role. Like for me, it has been like like a make or break experience. Um, yeah, what do you think about that? Like, what do you think are like the kind of the most important things for the first role if people have the flexibility to choose?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of times people get so hung up on salary, but this field, if you get the right experience and you have the right skills, you can grow your salary so much in the future after a year or two. And I think people just focus so much on the numbers, but I think what's more important is your ability to grow and learn in that environment. And I think a lot of things go into that. So, first of all, the manager someone who is going to foster an environment where you can learn, not just like spoon feed you everything, but give you a safe place to learn and make mistakes and grow, learn the right skills, someone who's going to support you and empower you to do your best and set you up to succeed. And then I think some other things that go into it on top of the manager is the type of work you're doing. So that's like the tools you're using. Are you using a lot of SQL or Tableau or Power BI? Are you using tools that are going to grow your skill set and set you up, in a year or two whenever you're looking for a new role? Because I think ultimately it depends on those few things. There's a few things that can really impact your experience a lot in a good way or a bad way. So if you're not learning a lot due to the type of work you're doing or the manager you have, it could really hurt you in a few years when you go look for another role. You might not be as valuable of a candidate as someone who, had a really good setup.
Yeah. Yeah, recently, actually, I was talking to my manager, and he was saying how like something that he thinks that like managers of entry level data analysts should be measured on is like what is the progression of the people that they're leading? Like, are they getting raises? Are they getting promotions? Like, if you're not seeing any upward mobility from really entry level anything, that's a red flag that the manager is like not doing their job as a manager. And it seems like that's basically what you just said.
Oh, totally, because there are managers out there who don't empower their direct reports. They don't set them up to succeed. They don't give them the encouragement and the trust and the respect that they need to thrive. And it really hurts the direct reports. It hurts their confidence. It makes them scared to try and fail. And it makes it just really hard to succeed and grow. So, a manager can really make or break your difference, in my opinion.
So how long in your first, I'm curious, in your first role, did you intentionally, like, was there a point that you're like, okay, I need to start upskilling, thinking about my next role? Or did you feel like the role itself was enough of a trajectory that you just like were upskilled naturally by being in the role?
That's a super good question. So I did feel fairly ramped up from my role. When I was a data analyst, I ended up being promoted as a senior data analyst and then eventually a manager. And when I left, I had 6 months of managing experience. It was a super small team. So I was only managing like one full time person and an intern, but it still gave me that experience to teach someone else and grow someone else. And I still talk to those people today. But, anyways, I felt like fairly ramped up. I had learned a lot in SQL, Power BI. I had those soft skills and leadership skills. But I did notice when I started job searching, I was like, I haven't used Python in my role very much. I learned it in my master's program. I'm rusty. I haven't used it in a while. That's a skill I need to brush up on because I was just looking at all these other job descriptions and I had pretty much decided that I didn't want to go into another manager position only because I felt like being a young manager, I was like, I need to go back to an IC individual contributor role and grow myself more before I go back down the management track. Or maybe I'll stay on the IC track. But I did see some gaps in my skill set. So I focused on Python. And when I was on the job market, I was posting more about Python on LinkedIn to market myself. So I think I was pretty ramped up with my previous role, but I did see a few gaps and filled those in for my next job search.
So when you say that you started working on Python, were you able to bring Python into what you were doing in your role, or were you doing it as side projects?
That's a good question. So I mostly did some side projects, but I also did bring in Python into my current role a few times. They weren't really projects where I like needed to use Python for them, but it was more just to like practice with real data, just so I could, just get my hands dirty on some real data and use it in the business context that I was used to for my job. So I definitely think if you can bring it into your current role, definitely do it if you have like some free time to do, some extra projects at work. But I did also do side projects and I redid a lot of the projects I did in grad school.
So do you think, like with the position you're in now, and you've seen a couple of different companies, a couple of different roles, talk to a lot of data analysts, if somebody were to say on their own, hey, I'd really like to learn to use Python for data analytics specifically, but like question mark, what do I use it for? Like, what would you say are the most common applications of Python that if people focused on that, that would be kind of like a really good start. And also, I want to add caveat, like Python is not necessary for an entry-level data analyst role. So if you're trying to get into data analytics for the first time, I'm not saying add Python to your stack. I'm saying if you're already in a data analyst role and you want to upskill, where are the places you should focus?
That's a really good point, and I wanna also preface with I'm a senior data analyst now, and I don't use Python hardly ever in my role, so even as you do grow, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are gonna be using Python every day. It just really depends so much on the role, and I know that sounds like I'm trying to not answer the question, but it really does depend on the role in the company. So I would say if you're starting out, definitely just get comfortable with data wrangling in Python, so pandas and um, NumPy and visual data visualization, so Matplotlib, Seaborn. Definitely just get comfortable with being able to visualize data and transform it. And then if you want to take it to the next level, you could do some HTML scraping. Um, Modeling, I think, is always a nice to have some sort of a foundation in building machine learning models. Nothing too complex, just like some regressions and decision trees. I think just having a basic understanding of those is great, but most analytics roles aren't going to be using machine learning and HTML scraping.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you could go back to your entry-level self and give her some advice, what kind of advice would you be giving her?
The first thing I would tell myself is don't let your Python skills get rusty because I literally finished grad school, finished a Python class, got an A, and then didn't touch it for like a year or two. I think it was actually 2 years maybe. I don't know. So I wish I would have kept that skill set going, even just like, practicing once a week. I think that it would have been a lot easier when I was job searching instead of me like rushing to like, rebuild that skill set when I was like on the job hunt. But the most important thing I would tell myself is to not have imposter syndrome. Being in that first role, I had so much anxiety that they hired the wrong person for the job. And I mentioned before, 6 people applied for the job. I was the only woman. And when I was like struggling, I was struggling a healthy amount. I was new to the company, new to the industry, new to analytics. So I was just learning. And I just remember thinking they hired the wrong person. One of those guys would be doing way better than me right now. And that's just such unproductive self talk. I really beat myself up so much to the point that Some days I could barely think clearly because I was so hard on myself. Like, I remember one of
Mhm.
my first assignments, my manager just gave me very simple assignments to kind of get my feet wet, build some confidence, get used to all the tools. He asked me to add a column to a query in SQL. It didn't need like a case when an account, no, it was literally just a column. And I was like, in my head, like, oh my gosh, add a column, like my SQL class, like do this. And I was like mentally combusting. And then I had to sit there for a second and be like, Jess, why are you freaking out? This is so easy. And I just think
Yeah.
back to the moment because I was so, like, stressed about being perfect and proving myself and just knowing how to do everything that I lost sight of the things I did know. So, I would go back and
Mhm.
tell myself to chill out and be confident in what I do know, but also willing to learn more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. I actually I don't usually have much of a problem with imposter syndrome, but I definitely, I had this project like probably 3 months-ish into starting my job. And it was like a Salesforce data model. It was like super complicated. And like I could not like the people that we were working with, like they could not name like they didn't understand what fields were actually being used for what. And so I couldn't figure out how to like match up the granularity between like 20 different tables correctly in order to get the right information. And like we just could not validate anything, like nothing was coming back correctly. And I had never experienced such a complicated data model before, and it honestly kind of traumatized me a little bit. And I was like, very like it was very discouraging. And then right now, I have a project that has a similarly very complicated data model, but the people at the company they have like a good handle on like what everything is, and they have this Excel spreadsheet. And I have just done such a better job. Like I just have been able to find everything, and I've realized that like I have to dig and dig and dig and go through this Excel file and look at this SQL query, and I have to do all of these things to find it, but I find it and there is an answer. And it's been like so healing for that like little part of me that was like, you can't do it, you can't handle it. And then I've come back and been like, actually, actually I can. I just also like, like I'm a consultant. So like the people at the company, there's some responsibility for them to know their own data. But there was definitely a real opportunity for like imposter syndrome to creep in there and be like, you can't do it. And instead I was like, actually, I can do it. It's a good feeling.
For sure, and I think CRM data is always the worst to work with, at least in my opinion. I haven't used Salesforce, but I've used HubSpot data before, and I think, like, it's really hard because they have, like, those built-in data sets in the back end, and everything is, like, different granularities, and then you're trying to understand this is what it is on the front end, this is what it is on the back end, this is how they all match together. So CRM data is no joke, but I think kind of what you were saying is the first time you do something, it just seems super, super hard. But then when you get the opportunity to do it again, maybe a few weeks or a month later, it's always easier once you've done it that one time.
Yeah, I saw this comment earlier. I just wanted to show it. I thought this was super funny. And I think that this in an interview, I mean, I want your opinion on it, but I actually think this is a great approach. Like, if you hit something in an interview that you don't know how to do, talk your way through it and say, okay, but I do know how to do this, and this is how I would do this. What do you think? Do you agree? Is this, I think this is like spot on.
Totally. If you don't know how to do something in an interview, I mean, it's you can't just sit there and be like, "Yeah, I don't know." You've gotta say something. So, I think just, like, talking through it, showing your thought process, and, be honest and candid. You can say, like, "I haven't done this before, but here's how I'd approach the problem." Maybe I don't have Tableau experience, but based on my experience in Power BI, this is how I would approach this issue. So I think just bringing in any past skills and then also showing how you would tackle it. It gives the interviewer an idea of how you think through things.
Yeah. On the subject of interviews and stuff, something I've recently started doing. So we all know that the economy is weird right now, and there's like all those tech layoffs happening. And I love my job. I don't think that I'm going to lose my job, but do think that it's a smart thing to just like prepare your resume and like prepare for the future. So something that I've started doing is every week at the end of the week, I go in and I write down in a document, like a running document, like my wins and my challenges and like a general overview for the week, because I realized that I looked back at like the last like 7, 8 months at my job and I'm like, oh my God, I've done so much, but like trying to come up with that to like put it in a resume is actually really challenging. And so, yeah, have you ever done like, have you gotten to that point where you've gotten to write your resume and then looked back and been like, oh my God, I have so much thinking to do? Or do you keep track of these things?
I've definitely done that before, and I think that it helps if your company has, like, a ticketing system or some kind of online planning system. Like, at Crunchbase, we use Jira, so I can go back and look at all the tickets I've done and kind of get an idea of my biggest accomplishments, and in the past, I was actually at a point where I had to think back of all the accomplishments that I accomplished. I was actually putting together a case for me to get a raise because I was
Mm,
hadn't gotten a significant raise in my position, and I was doing so much work. I was managing someone, I was leading all these initiatives, and I knew that I could be making way more money somewhere else, but I didn't want to go somewhere else. I liked my company. So I did have to go back through all of my tickets and write my biggest accomplishments. So that's definitely something that I want to be better at. I need to go back since I've been at Crunchbase for about 5 months now. I need to, like, go back and, like, compile my list while I've only been here for a few months. But it's definitely a good idea to keep track of your accomplishments because not only does the economy suck, like, a layoff would be devastating, but it would be better to be prepared than to not be prepared.
yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping that I stay with my company for a while and the next time I need to bring evidence for something, it's actually for a raise and not a new job. But um,
Same.
that said, I am curious about like, so when I guess like at that entry level role, the first role that you were at, like what made you decide, okay, I think it's time, like either you got a raise and then after that, but like what made you decide, okay, I think it's time to start looking for a new job? Because job searching sucks. So it's not like you just jumped into it like, hey, I want a job search. That'll be fun.
Yeah, and that's a good question, and that was something I really struggled with a lot. I had to wrestle through because I didn't know when the right time to leave would be. And I'm a very loyal person in everything I do. Like when I sign up for something, I'm all in. I'm super loyal. So it's very hard for me to leave phases of my life behind and go on to something else. That's always been hard for me. So there was a part of me like this was my first job. It was my internship. I've grown to a manager position. I do love my company. I love the people I work with. So why am I even thinking about leaving? But I think if you're starting to think about leaving, that's probably a pretty clear sign that you're missing something from the job or there's, some sort of reason you're being called away from it. So I reached out to a lot of mentors and friends, people who had left jobs before, people who I used to work with at that company, and they didn't like make any decisions for me or try to pull me away. They just gave me honest advice. Like in the past, this is when I knew it was time to leave. So I think leaning on mentors is really helpful. And the main reasons I knew it was my time to leave is that I wasn't growing my technical skill set anymore. I had kind of maxed out almost everything I could do in that role. And all the tasks I was doing was beginning to just become repetitive. I wasn't learning as much. And I just knew that I would have to go somewhere else to continue to grow as an
Hmm.
analyst. And that's really what it came down to. I was ready for the next adventure.
Yeah. That's interesting. So, did you like know, okay, next I want to, work in a role in like finance, or like I want to work in a role where I can use this tool, or was it just kind of like whatever the next adventure is, I'm ready for it?
I am a very selective job seeker. And
Okay.
like okay, I'm selective also, like, in other areas of my life. I'm the kind of person who goes out and gets what they want, and I will not stop until I reach my goal. So it is hard for me to just, like, send out all these applications and not be able to focus on that one company. Because when I started my job search, I had a few companies in mind, and I love the fintech industry. I love just cool companies with like startup culture. So I definitely knew what I was looking for, but I realized pretty quickly that I couldn't go like choose the company and the role that I got rejected a lot, and it took a while to get used to that. So I kind of had to broaden my search just a little bit and not get too attached to companies because you just really never know what could happen. But I was pretty selective. I was looking for fintech or tech, something kind of financy, preferably startup, a senior level analyst position, remote work. Obviously, I'm never going to work in an office again.
Yeah. So you've worked, you had the entry level role, and then you had a little bit at a bigger company, and now you're at a startup again. I'm just curious, which is I guess aside from that point, but I'm just curious, like now that you have the experience that you do, and you've worked kind of in management as an individual contributor, what do you think? What do you think? I guess I guess this is a big question. We can pull it apart one piece at a time, but like, what do you think people are looking for on resumes? And like, do you think that they're looking for something different on like entry level data analyst resumes than senior level? Not necessarily in terms of like, obviously they're looking for more experience on a senior level analyst resume, but like, is there like a kind of like essence, that they're like, do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, and I think that there's such a broad variety depending on different companies because I mostly applied for senior level positions, a few manager positions or lead positions here or there, but most of my bites were senior level analysts because that's what I've been doing previously. And I think senior analyst, I would say that it's the roles are looking for more experience just in general, but then I think they're tougher on the coding. So they expect you to be able to pass a live coding and or do a take-home assignment, statistics interviews. I think the stakes are just a little bit higher when you're being interviewed on your technical skills. And I would say the main differentiator is that a lot of senior level roles are looking for Python skills, and I think it just, again, really depends on the company. I don't use Python in my job now, hardly ever. I think I've used it like once, but there were senior level roles. I applied for one and they said they wanted someone with more advanced Python skills. And I was like, okay, like I was kind of
Not me.
bummed, but
Yeah.
that's the truth I needed to hear. So I think different companies have different priorities and they have different systems and tech stacks already in place. So sometimes they're just looking for someone that has that very specific experience.
Yeah.
I think
It's interesting on the point of the Python stuff. I have recently been, now that ChatGPT has come out, I've been dabbling, and I actually like, so I work primarily in Tableau, and I wrote like a pretty awesome Python script that goes into the XML file of a Tableau workbook and extracts all the calculated fields, and the formulas and their data type. It extracts the parameters and their information on a separate sheet. And then it makes this like flow chart, which you might have seen my post about it. And it's just like super cool. And it's like designed in object oriented programming. So like I have a class and like the different definitions. And there is no way I could have written that on my own. Like, I mean, I suppose, but it would take me like hours and hours and hours and hours. And like it took me like a day's worth of work to get this like really pretty cool Python script laid out. So I'm really interested in like kind of the future for interviews and analyst roles when we kind of have that like extra support of um of AI, because it's kind of here, and people are like, oh, it's going to replace our jobs. It's not. I had to do a lot of the heavy lifting of like thinking through things. But it was almost like autocorrect or like a calculator, right? Like it can't do everything for you, but it can do
Mhm.
some things.
Totally. And I think those are just really good points with what's going on right now with AI. I don't think AI can replace our jobs. I think maybe some essential positions or entry level replaced. Uh, Hello?
I think that either your internet is bad or my internet is bad. I'm not sure which one, but I
Oh,
imagine people in the chat can tell us.
yeah, it's kind of glitching, but
It's okay. It's just an internet thing. I caught most of what you said. The chat is like I think about 10, 15 seconds behind us. So if we just wait and see People let
Okay.
us know maybe which one of the two of us is the one whose internet is slow. It's yours.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I
Joe.
was about to say, I think it's mine because mine just like looked funny for a second. You know, it's crazy because I had good internet and it was like the cheapest option. And then Crunchbase gives us a monthly stipend to pay for better internet. So I
Hmm.
upgraded since my company's paying for it. And I swear this internet is worse than the cheaper one I had. So I'm gonna have to give them a call. But
Yeah.
anyways, about AI, I don't know where I got cut off, but I was saying I think AI could potentially replace some entry-level tasks and some entry-level work, but I really don't think AI is gonna even touch senior levels or analysts who have a little more experience, and probably not even too much the entry-level analysts either, because there's so much that goes into analytics beyond coding. If it's kind of like when you use Google Translate. Like, it
Hmm.
literally does what you ask it to do, but it might not make sense in the context, and I think that's exactly what ChatGPT can be like, because sometimes you can get the right code, but you have to know how to apply it to the business and apply the business to the code. So I feel like my job's pretty secure. I don't think AI is gonna replace analytics.
Yeah. I mean, people will yeah, I mean, I think that it's really cool, like I think that it can be really helpful, but definitely like when people say to me, sometimes they'll say, "Hey, I want to get an analyst role, but I don't want to do any presentations. I don't want to have to do like meetings and stuff. I just want to do coding." I'm like, "I don't think you understand what data analytics is." And like some people have said, "Well, business analyst is a separate role, and that's the one that like helps businesses make decisions." And like I get it that business analyst can be its own role. Um, but like I think in order to be a good data analyst, you have to be able to bring both together. You have to be able to like do requirements gathering at the beginning of a project and make sure that it matters. Like okay, P&L is for anybody who doesn't know, what is it, profits and losses? Like pretty much everything you're doing in your job has to come down at the end of the year to have an impact on the P&L, the profits and losses for the business. And if you can't articulate how your project is going to directly impact the profits and losses, then like that's questionable. So at the beginning of the project, you have to be able to like keep in context, like what are the business's needs? What are the business's problems? And so you don't just go off on a project and do a bunch of coding on their time and then come back and be like, I did it. And they're like, cool. I don't need any of that information. Do you agree with that?
Oh, totally. I think this is one thing that separates a beginner data analyst versus someone who has a little more experience. I think when you first start out, you get so excited to make dashboards, and we've all been there. I was there. So I'm not like talking bad about anybody, but you get so excited to make all these visualizations and dashboards. You're making things just because. Look what I can do.
Hmm.
Look how cool this is. Do the stakeholders use it? Is it impacting the business? Does it matter? If not, then it's probably not the best use of your time. And a big thing that I've really been learning in my current role is working with stakeholders. I have been pushed to grow that skill set so much over the past few months. And I didn't realize that I had so many areas that I could improve on. So now it's like the technical skills, those have been pushing me, but the softer skills have been pushing me even more in my current role because I'm working with all these different teams and trying to get everyone on the same page. Like, I'm talking to these stakeholders, what is important to you, what's important to you, what's important to leadership, and then trying to turn that into a success metric for an experiment we're launching in our product. So it's definitely really is challenging as a data analyst to have those soft skills to communicate and work with all those stakeholders.
It's funny that you say that because you would definitely think like, oh, if you become a senior data analyst, then you're going to be doing like way harder technical skills. So it's funny that like where you've been really felt stretched and pushed has been in the soft skills.
Totally. And again, it depends on the role. I've definitely been pushed a lot in my technical skills too. Just jumping on, this is the biggest analytics team I've been on. So I have tons of people to learn from. And then I've also moved to Snowflake. So this is my first cloud SQL environment, my first time working with a data warehouse. So I really have grown my technical skills a lot. And I feel like I'm in the modern ages now because before I was in SQL Server Management Studio. So being on the cloud using SQL, I'm like, whoa, I didn't know you could do this. And everyone's like, Yeah.
Where have you
So
been?
I'm definitely growing my technical skills a lot, but I think the soft skills are honestly what has been the most challenging part of my job recently.
Yeah, so I'm curious to hear like what like what does your day look like? Like obviously every role is very different. And I understand that so much more now than I did when I was trying to break into the industry, but like what's different about your role? Like you're kind of holding the scope a lot more, right? Like you kind of have to like a lot of the decisions are like with you and stuff, right? Like what is your what does it look like?
Yeah, so this team and company is the most organized company and team I have worked for. Our team runs off of 2-week sprints, which I love because we get tickets and then we have 2 weeks to go work on them. We collaborate, we peer review. So everything I work on, someone else goes behind me and asks me good questions, maybe challenges me to think deeper on something. And I think working in this structure has pushed me to grow because when you're working on sprints, you're being held accountable. You've gotta, I mean, gotta in quotes, like you don't have to if you can't get it done, but you've got to get it done in a reasonable time. And you also have to maintain that quality because your teammates or your manager, someone is going to go back and review your work. So I think it's definitely pushed me as an analyst a lot. And the type of work I'm doing, honestly, it really depends. I've done some SQL optimization, some dashboard optimization, and I've worked on some data warehouse work. So making different schemas and figuring out how to move dashboards to bigger warehouses to speed up the processing time. I've worked on building metrics for different teams, interpreting product experiments, and recommending a direction, yes or no. The most important project I'm on right now, which I don't want to talk too deeply on because I'm not sure what I can say publicly, but I'm working on a product experiment to improve the experience for our trial users. So, working in a software as a service product, our goal is to convert more users to paid users. So, I'm working with all these different teams, product, marketing, engineering, leadership, to launch this experiment to see if our product changes are good to roll out and are going to increase our success or not. So that's
Mhm.
been a really big part of my job lately. And I've spent a lot of time communicating and trying out different metrics and just trying to define the metrics in the experiment.
Hmm. So how in control of your schedule are you? Like are you expected to work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day or like is it flexible? Like could you put in some time on the weekend if you wanted to go grocery shopping? Like what's that like?
It's pretty flexible. My face for a second ago was because I just had like a PTSD moment from a prior world I was in. I did work and in a position that was 9 to 5 on the dot. On the dot at 5 p.m. sharp, everyone's lights would go, off on Microsoft
Mhm.
Teams. And it was so strict that the whole company even ate lunch at the same time. 12 to 1 on the dot was lunch. And that was just very hard for me to work in. So I knew my next job search, it was a huge priority to have flexibility. So I would say I have probably on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe like 7 to 8 flexibility. 7 or 8 out of 10 flexibilityness. So my schedule is fairly flexible, but we do have core working hours, which are
Yeah.
1 p.m. to 6 p.m. EST. And that's just because we have people in so many different time zones. That's like our standard. This is when everybody should be available for a call or, to collaborate if needed. But I take a Peloton break usually once a day, just set my status to lunch. I go on walks when I want to. No one's ever called me without setting up time first. It's very respectful. So I'm very
Yeah.
grateful to have that flexible environment and to feel respected and trusted by my coworkers.
Yeah, it's nice. I have that same feeling, and I mean, it's the reason that I felt comfortable enough to go to New Zealand and Australia for a month because I knew that, I mean, I was getting up at 5 a.m. every day so that I could try and mostly meet American time, so I'd go to meetings and stuff. Um, but I think that like what it draws back to, like you were saying, is like trust and respect. Like you have to have trust and respect from your boss and your leadership that like just because you're not on just because they are not micromanaging when exactly you are at your desk does not mean that you're not doing your job. And I definitely like that's a really big like I love my company and that thinking about like if I were to get laid off or like in the future, it would be really tough for me to leave my role because I feel like I have such like respect and trust and flexibility. And I definitely could not like that for me if I were to, like a future job sort search, a big, big ask for me would be like, I guess I think I'd probably even be curious to ask like management, like, what's the last time that you used your PTO? And like, I would want to know that people are using their PTO, they don't feel guilty about it, and that they have flexibility to do things because like I mean, I don't have kids, I don't have a house, I don't even have a dog, like, I have, like, some, like, cacti. So, like, money is nice, but, like, my most important reason that I got into the field and thing in life is, like, I want to enjoy my life, and that
Mhm.
means I need the flexibility to, I don't like grocery shopping on Saturdays because everybody's at the store, and grocery shopping always gives me a migraine. So if I can go shopping in the middle of the day on a Wednesday, sign me up,
Yep.
you know?
And then I go to the store and it's like, 12 PM on a Wednesday, and I'm like, "Why is everyone here? Don't they have jobs or something?"
Yeah, don't they have a job? It's funny because like I like recently went out to a bar on like a Saturday night and I said to my boyfriend, I was like, it is so busy here. He was like, because you went out on a Saturday night. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that like other people do things on the weekends because I do things during the week instead, and then I use my weekends to kind of like go hiking or whatever.
No, I
So speaking of like job switching and like, would you have advice for people when they decide to go ahead and job search for like red flags for like the second job? Like obviously, like we talked about the first job, you kind of just have to get a job. Um, but now that you've seen more of the industry, how do I make sure that in the future I never end up with a manager who like expects me in at 9 a.m. on the dot? Because it's just not going to happen for me.
Ooh, okay, how much time do we have? I'll say I think it's hard because sometimes expectations are different. I think sometimes expectations can be different based on what you hear in interviews and then what's reality when you start. I think a lot of times companies will just tell you what you want to hear and then they'll bait and switch you because they just want to recruit you. So I just want to kind of start with that sometimes you can do everything right and do all of your due diligence and then still end up in a place that isn't the best fit for you. But I definitely learned that it's important to ask not just lots of questions, but really deep questions because it's so like oversaid maybe, but you're interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you. And I think if you go in with that attitude, not like, oh, I want this job for sure. Go in with the attitude of, I might want this job, but I need to learn more about it. I think it just helps to go in with that mindset because then you're not dead set on the job. You're thinking about, is it the right fit for me? So I think asking really specific questions, asking to talk to different people in the company, different stakeholders. Um, I asked a lot of questions in my interviews. I'm trying to think what exactly I asked. It's been a while. I basically asked what the expected working hours are, um, what the manager's management style is, how they would react in these certain situations. I think in one interview too, I actually asked like, "Can I eat lunch when I want?" or is it there like a lunchtime? And I remember the person being like, "Yeah, you can eat lunch when you want." Like, that's so weird to ask. And that's when I realized, I was like, "Oh, so it's not normal for a company to all eat lunch at the exact same time on the dot." Um, so yeah, I think just figure out what's important to you and ask very specific questions about it. And then if you can, uh, you know, ask multiple people at the company those same questions and make sure that all of their answers match up. I think that's important as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I got a ton of green flags from my current company when I was interviewing because they like I could tell right away that they were very respectful of, your time and like they're like, yeah, I mean, your time is your own time. Like I trust that you're going to bill the hours that you need to customers and stuff. But something that I've noticed is interesting is that like talking to recruiters, I've talked to a couple of people who have like had not great experience with like especially external recruiters. And for me, that would have been like, oh, red flag about this company. But then they got into the role and they actually loved it. So I'm realizing that like if you're working with recruiters, you might be getting a picture, either a very green flag picture or a very red flag picture that is not, I guess like you would just like and like sometimes a hiring manager is not the same thing as like who your actual manager would be, which I think is crazy.
Mhm.
So I guess like just trying to actually talk to your actual coworkers and your actual manager would get around that because it's like it's so weird, like, coming out of, like, healthcare and being a nanny, obviously, like, I'm talking to a mom and it's her kids, like, there's no that's fully transparent. Um, Whereas, like, with companies, it can be this very convoluted, like, am I gonna get a place that's a fit for me? Am I gonna find out later it's not, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's tough because sometimes you can do everything right and try to protect yourself as much as possible, but sometimes like you can't really tell until you get in there. And at the end of the day, a recruiter's job is to find people with the right skill set and sell them on the position. And I think internal recruiters, based on my experience, I think they tend to have more stake in the game with that company because they work at that company, they understand the culture, they know what it's like to work there. Maybe they've talked to the hiring manager more about the role. So, in my opinion, I think I've had better success working with in house recruiters. External recruiters, you really have to find one you trust. I know a few that I really trust a lot, but I've also had some not be nice to me. I had one, I posted about it, I think a week or two ago. I had one tell me I was worth less than I was making by like 20%. And I was like,
You
that
don't get to
doesn't
make
even
that
make sense.
decision.
Sometimes they just want to fill those positions and they don't care. So I think you just have to like ask a lot of questions, and it's okay if you want to ask for more interviews. Like, hey, I'd love to talk to the hiring manager one more time just for 15 minutes, or I'd love to talk to someone else who reports to that manager. If any company says no to that, then that's a giant red flag, in my opinion. If you're
Mhm.
interviewing and they don't let you speak to multiple people and the people don't seem excited to work there, red flag.
Yeah, what have you got to hide?
Exactly.
Well, we're almost at time. First of all, thank you to everyone in the audience for tuning in. I honestly have no idea. My little thing says 4 people, but I see more than four comments in the chat. So I have no idea how many people came, but thank you for everyone for tuning in to say hi to us and chat with us. Jess, do you have any last tips that you'd like to impart on me specifically, but all of us before we log off?
Yeah, I'd say don't get discouraged, especially if you're out there looking for your first data analytics role. The first one is the hardest to get. This is a terrible market. The market is just really tough. It's not in favor of candidates. So, really, don't get discouraged if you're on the market. Just keep going. Getting rejected is normal. And the last thing I want to say is check out my LinkedIn course if you haven't watched it yet. It
Mhm.
prepares you to get your next role in data analytics. So it's great if you're looking for an entry level role or if you're looking for a more senior level role. So I definitely recommend that as a guide.
Great. Well, thanks, Jess, for coming. And this has been so fast, such a fast hour.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I'm going to end the broadcast. And thanks, everybody. Hang on.